Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Cantey, and this is another episode of Living Enlightened Every Day. Today, we're asking the question, who are you being? It's a great question to ask yourself as you're listening or watching right now. Who are you being as you listen to this podcast? Let's explore. So, as you listen to this podcast, just check in with yourself and ask, who am I being as I listen to this? And what does that mean? Well, are you being open? Are you being optimistic? Are you casually strolling through life right now, listening to a podcast about enlightenment? Or are you running around? Are you annoyed? Are you nervous? Are you frustrated? Where are you? Who are you being? And as we start to explore this a little more, we realize that when we check in with ourselves, we can kind of adjust who we're being. If we're running around, we can slow down, take a few deep breaths. We can be open minded if we feel like we're judging. We can be anything that we choose as long as we check in. In other words, we can't change how we're being, who we're being, as we are being, if it's in the background, if we don't notice, if we aren't aware. There are a lot of people that have noticed some changes going on for me recently. I've just touched on a few of those changes, but those changes really began when I started reading a book called The Ultimate Coach. The book is about influential life coach Steve Hardison. I had heard of him as the most expensive coach in America, probably the world. And if you Google him, you'll see that he charges, it's right there on his website, $200,000 per client for a year of coaching, 100 hours of coaching. He charges $10,000 for a 2-hour session called a Be With session. And when I first heard about him, I didn't pay any attention because that wasn't really in my realm of interest. I was a minister, a pastoral counselor. I taught classes based on spiritual principles and workshops based on my book, Living Enlightened, The Joy of Integrating Spirit, Mind, and Body. You know, I wasn't I wasn't in that realm of life coaching, even though I've done a lot of pastoral counseling and coaching in that area. But in this new phase of my life, I don't have a center for spiritual living. I'm not a senior minister at a church or a center. I'm moving into this transition in my life. I'm an empty nester. My son is happy and healthy and moved away. And I did take a year off. I was on sabbatical. I was fully on vacation mode. But now there is something calling me, as I had before been helping people to love their life and live their passion. So now what do? I really don't know. What do I do with my master's degree and doctorate degree in comparative religion and consciousness studies? What do I do with being an ordained minister? My years of counseling, years of teaching classes, workshops, courses, retreats. Now what? So I did. I looked up Steve Hardison after someone recommended a life coach for herself. She was going through a similar period. And I was not impressed with that life coach. And I remembered, oh, this guy, Steve Hardison, the most expensive coach in the world. What does he do? How could he possibly change people's lives in, a 2-hour session? And, what was he doing? I started researching. I Googled him. There is not a lot about Steve Hardison. You won't see too many things. People talk about him, but not too many things that he's done. But there is a YouTube video about him in which um, uh, it was entitled TBO LIT NFL, the Deuce Latui story. I'll put that link in the show notes. And I started watching it and I was fascinated. It was amazing. He has such a presence. And about halfway through, I think it's around 2-hour video, about halfway through, I realized I know what he does. I can see who he is. He's living enlightened. Now, if you've been hearing any of these podcasts, my one of my favorite, simplest, direct um, definitions, let's say, of being enlightened, living enlightened, is being right where you are, doing exactly what you are doing, being with whoever you are with, and seeing and sensing good or God or wholeness or presence right there. That's sort of a simple definition. Well, Steve Hardison is completely, utterly present with whoever he is with. He is just the presence. So now I'm fascinated. I mean, there's this life coach out there who is completely present. He's living by what someone like me would call spiritual principles, but there is no such thing as spiritual principles and other principles. There's just spirit living its life. And there he was. Halfway through, I thought, I got to find out more about this guy. And I Googled some more and I found out that his wife, Amy Hardison, and his friend, Alan D. Thompson, had written a book about him. So I just left the video. I was on Amazon and I ordered that book. It is, and I just started reading it. He is so unique. But the thing that got me is that I wasn't going to buy a book about someone's life who's rich, or who is, just randomly. And I turned, so when you're on Amazon, you can look at the front cover, of course, and you look at the back cover. I clicked on that. I read it. Well, I'm going to read you what it says on the back cover and the reason why someone like me bought this book. Dear potential reader, as you may have noticed, there are no testimonials on the back cover of this book imploring you to read it. I vetoed that. This is by Steve, by the way. The only testimonial I am interested in is the one you will have from reading and experiencing this book. Please do not, in capitals, read this book about me. Read this book about you. Read it about being. And as you read it, ask yourself, who would I need to be a more loving person? Who would I need to be a more effective parent? Who would I need to be to create a level of confidence that is remarkable? Who would I need to be at peace with who I am? Who would I need to be fully in love with myself and my life? Who would I need to be to live the most extraordinary life I can live? Mm. Are you getting that? He says, I promise you that if you read this book with the intention of expanding your state of being, you will do exactly that. Your experience will be remarkable. Who you are being is everything. Loving you. Be blessed. Be you. Steve Hardison. Again, as a spiritual teacher, as a spiritual learner, as someone who is just completely involved with spirit, integrating spirit, mind, and body, I'm like, man, this is good. I'm reading this book. Of course, I bought it and started reading it immediately. As I was reading it, as I said, I was in this transition period and I was ready to come out of my vacation mode. I was ready to come out of sabbatical. I was very rested. I had been meditating. I'd been traveling. I'd been relaxed in preparing myself for this new phase. But I feel like there was something I was needing to do in order to help people love their life and live their passion. Who am I without this umbrella of the Centers for Spiritual Living? I'm still there, but I don't have a center. So who am I with a book, with the degrees, with the information, with the teaching and speaking experience? Who am I? How am I to help people love their life, live their passion? How do I serve myself and others in a new capacity? I didn't know, but I started reading that book and I just started feeling so empowered. I could see places in my life where it's okay to be relaxed. It's okay to go on sabbatical, to go on vacation, even if it's a year. I was in some intense caregiving with my son and his illness for a long time. So, I mean, all of that is so good. But I was starting to see places in my life where I was not committed, get this, to myself. To myself, my commitments to my son, I will honor them, to the nth degree. To my parents, my mom, my family, my siblings, my friends. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it most of the time. But my commitments to myself, if you watch my video a few weeks ago on self-love, I was just falling down on really commitments to myself, my self-empowerment, my self-love, my self-realization. So this was all kind of starting to bubble up. Who am I being? Who am I being in this new phase of my life? And I was feeling very empowered. And the morning that my boyfriend at the time left, we got in a fight, and I just told him how it is. Like, this is how it is for me right now. This is what's happening with me. And as I told him, I was like, oh, I'm channeling Steve Hardison. And I swear I said that. And it made me laugh because there is this sense of power, self empowerment, and self realization that comes up for me as I was reading that book. The reason I am telling you about this is because a lot of people since then have seen some changes in my life, and they're still happening. And it occurs to me, as Steve has said, you can do the same things that I do. You can read the same book or take the same workshop and have no results like my results, have no experiences like my experiences, because you can do the things that someone does, but you maybe haven't found out who were they being as they read that book. Who were they being when they took that course or went on that retreat? When we can listen to how people are being, we have a much deeper realization than if we just follow these 5 steps into being a better partner, a better parent, a better teacher, whatever. These 10 steps or these 25 chapters will help you do this and this and this. But who are you being? as you take those steps. And if you are in alignment with being, being, your highest self, then someone may have a wonderful formula for parenting, a wonderful workshop for meditation, a wonderful transformational workshop for self-realization, whatever it is, for life coaching, for finding your purpose, your mission, your vision, all of those things. But it's who we are being as we move into those steps or those actions or that course or workshop, right? Who are we being? So, to my friends and family and people who have purchased this book, and I'm sure they're going to hear of some more things that I've been doing lately, I have been in this wonderful place of transition, of moving, of looking forward to, of creating, of self empowerment by releasing what no longer serves me. So, to read any book or take any class or workshop, or even I'm going to say, talk to a dear friend who loves and supports you, if we are not willing to change, if we are not willing, and I don't even mean change, if you read my book, it's like from changing one thought to another, or changing one habit to another, or changing, some aspect of ourselves that is limiting, working on ourselves. That's not it. If we simply drop the thoughts, drop the habits, drop the patterns, dropping it like dropping your coat at night, just taking off all your clothes, becoming naked. That's being. And from there are infinite possibilities. And the possibilities for me came up in that deeply open, vulnerable space of surrender, not surrendering to something or someone, but surrendering all the stuff, the thoughts, the patterns, the habits that, even though I might say they're good or they're bad, it's not that. It's to be the change that I want to see, means to step into no thingness in order to create from the power that I am now, not who I was a year ago or 4 years ago or 10 years ago. Who am I now? How is spirit expressing through this now? To give ourselves that opportunity, we let go of what was, all the stuff that was, all the stuff that's in the past, to be completely present to this moment. So I bought the book, and it's a book about being. When you read it about being, you go through, as you read about Steve Hardison's uh, formulative childhood experiences, you remember yours. If you decide to read it that way, you see where you formed beliefs or ideas or thoughts or habits that served you or didn't serve you. Mine came up quite a bit. It was wonderful. It's easy in that place of being open, reading the book about myself, to recall the events of my childhood, adolescence, or adulthood that shaped who I am. And even more important, it was easy for me to see where I had left myself disempowered recently. That lack of commitment to myself, as I spoke about. So, because of this book, I was just feeling like I had to pick up some pieces that I had forgotten about. Some of the most important things were commitment. They were speaking my word. Our words are so powerful. I speak often about being aware of who we say we are when we use the words I am. What follows is creative. It's creating. Our thoughts create who we are moment by moment. And when we know that we are powerful, that we are creative, that we are love, that we are joy, whatever the words are that we want to see more of in our lives, we simply let go of who we think we are not and create with I am statements who we know ourselves to be. And sometimes, yes, we need a coach. We need someone who knows the power of words, the power of thought, the power of being. And so I've created my I am statements, my declarations about myself. Again, I've done this many times in my life. And who I was a year ago, being I declared for myself, I am on vacation. I am on sabbatical. I relax. I let go. I am uh, doing everything that I would do on a vacation for a year. And I lived it and I loved it. And I feel rejuvenated and energized and vitalized for this next phase. So, being, my purpose, my vision for myself has shifted dramatically. And it is who I am being now. So I ended up um, not in a relationship that was not serving me ultimately. And I am made so many new friends. I've made so many new connections with people who are living a spiritual life. They're integrating spirit, mind, and body without using the spiritual terms, the mystical terms that I had not grown up with, that I had spent my whole life learning terms like enlightenment. So just being present to what is and allowing that to guide and direct me in this next phase is just so powerful for me right now. A lot of people went and bought this book because they just see how excited I am. They've noticed some wonderful things that have synchronized in my life. And they're like, oh, I want some of that. And one of my dear friends went and bought the book, and she didn't read the back cover. She didn't read the first two pages for the introduction. She said she got a little bored, so she was skipping ahead. So clearly, she was not having the experience that I had reading the book because she wasn't being in a manner that I was for herself. She wasn't being directed by the book's direction. Read this about you. Read it and ask yourself the question, who would I need to be? And just pick one of those empowering questions that you want to work on for your life and read the book from that perspective. She wasn't doing that. So I invited her, which she may or may not do. Of course, it's completely up to her. It's completely up to you if you buy that book or any other book. Who are you being as you read a book? When I read that book, it took me a long time. And people that had read the book said, why don't you finish the book? You need to finish the book. And I said, no, that's not how I read a book. I don't read a book for information. I read any book I read for an experience. And sometimes I read one line and I close my eyes and I am just with that sentence, that phrase, or if it sparks a memory or if it sparks um, an emptiness in me, I just sit with that and it's delicious, right? Why do I need to finish a book that's not the purpose for me? I am that my purpose is to have an experience for myself that is expansive, that grows me, that directs me, that inspires me, or that transforms me. That's how I read any book. So, once again, when we give ourselves the permission to ask, who am I being as I interact with my parents, interact with my child, play pickleball, take the dog for a walk. Who am I being? Am I being rushed? Am I being annoyed? Am I being frustrated? Am I being casual? Am I being inauthentic? Am I being present? Am I being inspired? Am I being open? We can just give ourselves some space as we engage in any activity, any conversation, any situation, and ask ourselves, who am I being? And this book brought me back to this core truth, this core question. Who am I being as I? And it has changed my life dramatically. Right now, I'm in Los Angeles, and I just took a workshop, which I am going to tell you all about in the next couple of weeks. And I have speaking engagements coming up. I have travel coming up. I have a retreat coming up. My life is just moving in these amazing directions with amazing writers and authors and people, just people that I'm meeting through being, stepping into this expanded, open, I'm going to say new self, myself, a version of myself that is emerging day by day, minute by minute, moment by moment, this eternal now. I am unfolding as a greater expression of integrating spirit, mind, and body. And it is amazing. So I invite you to be any way you choose, but choose how you want to be rather than forgetting that we always are at choice as we pick up the phone, pick up our pen, just walk into a meeting, get into our car. Ask yourself, who am I being? And as we do that, we find that who we choose to be is so much more powerful than what is happening out there. Who we are committed to being is so much more powerful than that person showing up being annoyed, or that person showing up being angry, or this person showing up being intimidating. It's like, I am being empowered. I see that you're being in your space. And that's fine for you. I am being empowered in this moment. So that is just where I am this week, feeling very empowered by questioning for myself, who am I being? And then I remind myself who I am with these powerful I am statements, whatever it is that I wish to experience for myself. I am empowered. I am love and loved and loving. I am surrounded by people who support me. I am supported within by spirit, life, and love. Whatever it is, I stand in that. And I invite you this week to use this phrase, who am I being? And go to Amazon and Google that book and read for yourself the back cover of that book. It's called The Ultimate Coach by Amy Hardison and Alan D. Thompson. And just read that back cover and engage with yourself as who are you being? I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe if you want to know when the next video is coming out, and just laugh, love, and live enlightened this week. Remind yourself of the truth of your being and the power of your commitment to be you.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next Tuesday at 7 a.m. Mountain Time for Living Enlightened with Elizabeth Cantey. Integrating your spirit, mind, and body. Learn more at www.ntmedia.org.